Or okay.
Freeman and I are just putting our hands up over here. It's fine. Oh, cool. My audio wasn't
No,
fucked.
the only reason is because it wasn't, for whatever reason, it chose not to recognize my audio device. Also, this is
Freeman and
loud
I
now.
just immediately default to like Street Fighter idle animations.
Okay, there we go. Apologies. Hi everybody. I did the thing that I do to other people, where I hit the live button before I was ready. And since I am the one in control of all of that, I'll let you figure out how that's even possible. But
Lucas played himself, is what I am hearing.
God, boy, did I. Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome back to Ramblemancy. I'm very happy that you all remember us, given that the last time we were here was like 300 years ago. Um,
It's
and
been 84 years.
back
I was
in the
there, Gandalf.
days of
I was there
yore.
3,000 years ago.
Anyway, welcome
I
back
was
everybody.
there the day the
We've
Twitch
had
stream. Never mind.
I was there the day the Twitch stream of men failed. It's us. We're men. We're the men.
It's true.
Christ.
That's how that went.
Good lord. Good
Anyway.
lord. Let's get on with this.
You know what I just realized?
What?
I forgot, because I was so focused on fixing my lighting before stream, I forgot to refill my water. So guess what? John, I'm throwing you under the bus in a different way today. Guess what? Guess who gets to do announcements today?
Oh, cool.
Goodbye.
It's me. All right. See if I remember what our announcements are. Our announcements are fairly straightforward right now. We're not, as far as I know, going to have Ramblemancy next week because it's Black Friday and Thanksgiving and plans and stuff. So
Oh.
you won't see us here next Friday. I'm not sure what Lucas and Freeman's plans are for the following Friday because I will be at PAX Unplugged, but we'll
In December?
keep an eye on it. Yeah.
Keep an eye
Man,
on
that feels weird. It feels weird. December should not be here already, but it is. Well, it's not, but it will be soon. Sooner than I would like. The end of the year is fast approaching, and Santa's making a list or something like that. Anyway, the other thing that you can keep an eye out for next week at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, because we have done that now, is Tomorrow is Dead on Wednesday. It will be back to our regular cast now that our lovely guest cast plus Allison are done inflicting emotional damage upon us.
It's true.
So you can catch, if you didn't manage to make it to the guest cast streams, they go in the exact same place the other ones go. They are in Twitch pods and probably on YouTube.
They are currently not on YouTube, but I'm working on it. It will be happening. So
I need to make thumbnails for those, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, those will be up on YouTube soon. If you want to watch them, they are highlighted in our Twitch bot. Yep. And that's kind of... Oh, right. And we have merch. We have merch. Tomorrow is Dead merch.
Wait, I have a thing for that. Hold on.
Yeah!
There it is.
Bree Donnan did some season 1 inspired Tomorrow is Dead merch. A bunch of items related to the kids' adventures are on here. A very cool collage tee. If you want to pick up one of these, they are live right now in our Streamlabs merch store, and I think that is kind of it for our announcements.
There actually is another one, which since we also haven't had a chance to do like a staff meeting in a while, this is sort of coming as a surprise to John and Freeman as well. But I think they knew it was coming; they just didn't know specifically when. But I believe on it now. This is a weird day for us, but I'm gonna say it's Monday, December 6th. Not 6th. Is that a Monday? December 6th.
I'm looking.
It's not a Monday. No, sorry. Monday, December 4th. December 4th.
Ooh.
We are going to have most likely, that's what the day that we're aiming for. We're just waiting on to double confirm. But that is the day that we are going to have our Q&A for our special guest cast. So, yeah. And it's on a weird day because it's hard to get that particular group together live for something live during our normal times. So Monday, we're streaming on a Monday for the first time in forever. So yeah.
Okay, cool. What time? Sorry.
It'll probably be at 6, but don't quote me on that. Actually, it might be closer to 7. We'll see. I'll let you know. Again, like I said, we're still waiting on double confirmation. I'm just getting this out first, like as soon as possible, so that you all have time to adjust to unusual streaming times. So yeah, we'll have our Q&A for our guest cast on December 4th. Yes, stay in the Discord for announcements. Thank you, Matt.
Best place to be for announcements. Also, yeah, Odd said also just cool merch if you like zombie vibes or zombie survival vibes. And yeah,
That's
100%.
very true.
It's like it's subtle. I like it. It's kind of like I'm wearing a similar collage tee that another friend of ours made right now that I'm a big fan of this style. So
yeah.
Anyway.
It's one of those, like, it's if you like zombie merch, it's great zombie merch, and if you know, you know. That's it. That's really the shirt.
Yeah. That's my favorite kind of merch.
Yeah. Those are the announcements, I believe. I don't think you have much else. The Ramblemancy schedule will be different. I think there are only 2 more episodes of Tomorrow is Dead before we go on our like holiday break for that. Just so that we give everybody time for the holidays and time for filming around that stuff. So there's 2 episodes left of Tomorrow is Dead before we go on our break through the end of the year. So we will not be coming back with Tomorrow is Dead the second half of the season until like probably late January at the earliest. So yeah, watch the 2 episodes that are coming up. They're a lot.
There's so much.
We jammed so much into those last 2 episodes. Whew, y'all ain't ready. Okay. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's all we have to announce.
Yeah.
Which means that we get to move on to the beginning of the conversation this evening to a topic that has been much on my mind because I've been working on a game and it prompted me to have thoughts. And I think it's a good place to start. We by no means must be moored to this particular like topic the entire evening, but it's one that I just keep thinking about and that I know some folks in chat have opinions about. So the short version of my question here is like, where do we draw the line between a board game and a tabletop RPG? Because I've been thinking about this a lot. Because the game that I'm working on right now, I Crave the Loop, is a silly like little solo duo game that you can play while you eat a snack. And I was calling it an RPG as I was writing it, and the more of it I wrote, I was like, I think I just made a board game that's in a book. But I was like, but it feels a little bit floatier than that. And then I was like, but wait, is Dungeons and Dragons just a board game in a book? Now that I think about it. And then I started thinking about it real hard. And I was like, hold on a minute.
Geek Out's with the hot take. And like, it's hot take, but I support it. One is fun and one isn't, is where the line is. Hot take, but you know what?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Matt said, I don't care where the line is, but it's where one is fun and one isn't. That's an excellent hot take.
It's a hot take.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, that's just like a question that's been on my mind because it does feel to me like there's a dial. It's less of a switch between the two and more of a dial. Like I feel like on this end you have Fishblade, the diceless, GM-less RPG like storytelling game, and then on this end you have Yahtzee.
Right.
Well, something so utterly devoid of any amount of like narrative or story that like there's no way to attach it.
So Odd said it's got to be the role playing to some extent, right? And I think maybe, but more specifically, because like if you think about it, there is nothing more in D&D that tells you to role play than there is in a game like Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing in the book that explicitly tells you must play your character as if they were that character. Like, it's just sort of a built-in conceit that we have, knowing that that's what we're coming into. But you could play Betrayal at House on the Hill every bit as the same that you role play D&D. So I think you're close, and I think you're onto something for sure, Odds. But I think the line maybe doesn't so much have to do with the role playing so much as the role playing is like a signpost for where the line is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like to me it almost feels like a, I hate to say it this way, but like almost like a marketing thing. Like, what is the expectation that you come to this game with? Like, when I sit down to play Betrayal on House of Hill, I'm not really expecting to like make decisions in character. I'm expecting to make decisions in the most efficient possible way to prevent the person who become, if I'm one of the survivors, to prevent the person who becomes the monster, or the betrayer, or whatever, from winning the game, and vice versa, right? And that, like, to me is there's like this conceit with a lot of role playing games. I feel like that's not necessarily always the way that you're going to play.
Right. Well, and I think like all these are excellent points, odds about like the fact that there's like like in the PHP there are tips for role playing, and that's absolutely true. But I will also say this, like it is absolutely possible to it is in equal measure to play D&D without doing like the role playing, just as possible to play Betrayal with role playing,
You could
right?
totally.
Like it's and because like you are given a character and you're told things about that character that have no bearing on the gameplay whatsoever. So like, there it's on the one, like I agree with you, and I think we're circling around something there, but I don't know that like I don't know, it's a weird place, right? Like and that's why this conversation that John brought up is so interesting, because like
And
it's
like,
not as simple as just saying like, oh, it's this, because like there are exceptions, and like
mhm.
popular ones too, not even like niche ones.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite kind of thing to talk about because it doesn't super matter, but it is fascinating. Because like, it's interesting because D&D's history is essentially
Oh,
in wargaming.
I'm clipping that.
I'm sorry, I heard.
I might.
I heard back the other way.
Never mind. I'm not.
There's so
But
much
that's good.
chaos of this, so much
Oh
okay.
my god.
Okay,
So,
bye.
Amazing.
Michael.
Amazing. You do have to know that.
Um,
Thank you.
so train of thought derailed.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
absolutely, 100%.
it was pulled along in the wake of the little goblin scream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is interesting to me that because like D&D does have its roots in wargaming, and wargaming is much less on the role play, like, and you don't do a lot of role playing in there. Like we're talking about like we're talking to scale miniature recreations of terrain. We're talking like millions of or thousands of little pieces put up here to like historically connect, or like play out in different ways these historical battles and stuff like that. And that like falls much more on the like this is like very very high end nerdy board gaming as compared to
Well,
this role playing game.
and I think Odds said something here that made me think that I might have a thing where like the line is, because Odds said, okay, so as someone who's a big board game person, I also think this touches on like wargaming, and the story makes a big difference. I don't play board games for the story; I play them for the mechanics and strategy, and I think that's fair. And I think there's a sort of other than like the narrative part of it, there's also a sort of separate but like equally present part of it as well, that with war where there's no clear win scenario in a role-playing game,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Like,
big, I think.
because and you could say, oh well, there's no winners and losers, but there's board games where there's no win, where no player is a winner or a loser, but there's a win scenario, right? There's co-op
Yeah.
board games where like there's a win scenario, whereas TTRPGs, I mean, I suppose it's possible to play them with a win scenario, particularly like one shots and short shots, right? But like
The The win scenario is much more abstract,
right? Yeah, much more abstract win scenario, because it really isn't, like Odds is saying here, it really isn't about the win scenario or achieving that win scenario. It's about furthering the narrative and the story elements of it. And I think that goes like hand in hand with that, like the win scenario thing goes hand in hand with what Odds is talking about, which is like the narrative storytelling aspect of the like yeah.
Because like the goal of Dungeons and Dragons, like there's no, the thing about the PHP is that it doesn't really, it gives you some tips on role playing, but like it also doesn't have a, like it doesn't have a win scenario written into it in the way that, like, if I am playing, say, Everdell, which is a friend of mine's like absolute favorite series of board games, which is kind of just like more, in my experience playing it, a more complicated Settlers of Catan, and much cuter. You basically are like building a little city. It's a resource management game. You're building a city of cute animals.
Yeah.
And there's like a variety of strategies that you pursue, but there's points associated with all of them. And so at the end of the game, like once the seasons have passed and the game clock has run out, then like you stop and you total up everybody's points and somebody wins. And so like how you get there is kind of up to you, and you can build a little story. Like you can choose like one kind of like city building tactic over another because it feels thematically appropriate to you. Or you can also do it, in a sort of like ruthless point mongering efficiency that doesn't necessarily exist in a game like D&D. Like there's no like point system. Like you don't get literal style points for fireballing the boss to death, right?
Yeah. It is interesting, and I guess it's into a topic that's very far away, I think, from, and this could easily be the subject of its own, Ramblemancy. And I have my opinions about it. And here, you know what? I'm just gonna do this to myself. I'm just gonna ready. Here.
Oh! Is it? Are we running up the Colville counter?
Oh fuck! It's making me log in. Yes, that's exactly what's gonna happen. That's exactly what's happening.
I got you.
Thank you. There's a topic that this sort of brings up, which is the question of like what actually is like counts as role playing. And I was literally just, it's funny because that we're talking about this right now, because that was literally just watching the video on role playing yesterday after like months of not having watched any Matt Colville content. And he breaks it down into like the different levels of role playing, and like the base, like the most sort of abstract form of role playing is making decisions in the context of the diegetic world, right? Making them as the character. Now, then the next level above that is making decisions that way, but as distinct from what you would do in that scenario. That's the next layer beyond that, and that kind of stuff, right? But like just making decisions as the character, I think is the most abstract way that you can define role playing, and I think that's so. That I think is where we start getting into this thing about like, oh well, are you role playing in games like House on the Hill or whatever? Are you maybe not? I mean, personally, I don't think I have, but I think you could, in just as equal measure that you could not role play in D&D. That's my point. It's not that it's not that they're the same thing. What I'm saying is that in Betrayal at House on the Hill, it is this. I think you are exercising the same muscles role playing in Betrayal at House on the Hill that you are in not role playing in D&D. Right, like you're exercising the same muscles. It's not like, because D&D doesn't include any explicit support for role playing at all. Like there's no explicit mechanical support. And yeah, I saw Matt mention about like the traits and the bonds and the flaws and all that sort of stuff. But like, what mechanical benefit does that convey to the game? None. Like you literally don't even have to think about that at all, ever. You never do. And so I think it's one of those things where like there's nothing intrinsically in D&D as a game in the books, like Odds mentioned, there are tips that are written out for like role playing and like that kind of stuff, right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there about like backstory and things like that, but they don't have to be. There's nothing mechanically that enforces that style of play. Just like in Betrayal at House on the Hill, there is nothing mechanically that prohibits you from playing that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's all I'm saying. It's not that they're the same thing, because they're definitely not at all the same thing. They are very distinct from each other. But you could play Betrayal at House on the Hill as if you were role playing in D&D. And in fact, I've recently been watching on Smosh. They actually do in fact play Betrayal Legacy, and it's kind of silly, but it is like that bridge point, right, where they are playing 100% in character the whole time, you know.
And like I know that I find myself slipping into like silly voices or like even like role playing and making decisions that are not strategically the most beneficial thing for myself in even like social deduction and board games when I play them. Mostly because a lot of times when I'm playing board games with people these days, I'm playing board games with people who are a lot better than me, and I know I'm not going to win. And so I just make what I think is the funniest choice in any given moment.
And you just have fun, you know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Odd says TTRPGs do invite you to start with the premise of roleplay, whereas board games invite you to learn the win condition first. Absolutely. No, you're absolutely 100% correct, which is why I'm saying that that's kind of like the area where the line might be when it comes to like board games and like role-playing games, and also role-playing versus not role-playing. I think that is, I think you're like, I hope I'm not coming off, Odds, as if I'm disagreeing with you, because I'm not. I think we're kind of circling around the same thing here. We're just kind of coming at it from different directions, but like what we're doing is we're sort of zeroing in here on where that line might lay. So like,
yeah, and it's kind of, I think it's kind of what I was talking about earlier, is that it's a dial, and like the transition point between one or the other is mostly on like, how is this game packaged to you? When I hand it to you and explain it to you, what am I starting with? You know, and and like the odds did also have a comment earlier that I liked, which was how very human of us to try and find the line between two things that may well be a spectrum.
For sure. Yeah.
Also, how very English major of me, if I may say so.
Let me ask you a question that assumes an answer that may in fact not exist.
Like
very English major of you.
Turn every single lit major and philosophy major head in the room. But yeah, no, this is fun to talk about, I think. And also, like, you know, we talk a lot about D&D because that's like a very monolithic one, and like it falls apart more, I think, especially when you start talking about other games, like, because we know that there are ones that exist farther, like on either end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
You know, like you can't really play Wanderhelm without role playing, and there is no win condition in that game.
Right.
Like there's not stats to track. You make up some shit about a thing that, like, about a little guy, a cute little guy that doesn't exist, and then you poke your cute little guy around in an imaginary setting with a bunch of other cute little guys that people are also poking around. And like it is the most, like, you know, sitting around with a bunch of friends at like on the playground going like, no, and then I would, like, which is very, very much a role-playing game or like a storytelling game, right? But this has also been interesting to me in the context of like solo games, which I haven't dipped my toes too far into, but I have made some, like a couple of them now. And like Terminus obviously is at least a game like that I wrote that is not, there's not a win condition ever assumed in that. The win condition is solely for me, and it's that you go take a walk and appreciate the world around you, and like that, I guess, is the win conditions, that you took a walk and enjoyed yourself. But like, you know, other solo games that I have, like,
you said I took a walk, and my brain jumped immediately to Blink-182 lyrics, and I'm so sorry for who I am as a person. I took a ride. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, nice. Absolutely.
I'm so sorry for who I am as a
Term
person.
this win conditioning. Did you touch grass? Yes, you won. I take a walk. Wow.
That's also a good one. Damn. All right.
Nice.
Yeah. But whereas, like a game that I picked up this year at Gen Con, Rune, is a solo role-playing game, right? Where you're playing, it's very like Dark Souls inspired. But it's another one that's got like grid-based combat, and there's a map for you to kind of like explore, and dice resolve the combat. And then like when you are playing solo, you have to have structure for the other half of the world too. You're playing both GM and player, which is kind of how board gaming works, right? Like when you're playing a board game, everybody is kind of cooperatively being the rules structure, the game master, unless some board games do actually have a person who's doing something different. But I digress. So yeah, like there's
Ramblemancy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's practically the Ramblemancy slogan.
I digress.
I digress. I touch grass. I eat in. Never mind.
This conversation though is just reminding me of Freeman talking a while back about how like you role played in Clue.
Yeah, I was thinking about that also. Professor Plum.
Yep.
Yeah. Professor Plum.
Man.
Very
role playing in Clue, the fucking entry level drug tabletop RPGs.
I definitely like played a lot of RPGs between board games when I came back to board games and played Clue one random time with some strangers. I went full into it.
The best part of that for me is the fact that you're
but...
playing with strangers and doing that. That's great.
And some of them were like, "Oh shit, this is cool." And others were like, well, "Just try to figure out the puzzle. We're trying to win something." I'm like, "Okay." Well. I kept being Professor Plum. I was so gay. It was amazing.
Good.
Oh my god! I just like you're in there like doing that, and somebody else like picks it up and is all of a sudden Benoit fucking Blanc, and then somebody else is like, "A man is dead."
Oh my gosh!
And you're like, yeah, you're getting into it now.
This is amazing.
Gentlemen, this is no time for levity. A man is dead.
On the other side of the fucking game board, somebody's just like,
it's like on the other side, that same person's like, we're never fucking playing this game again.
Oh
my god.
It's not the best board game. I'm not going to play it like once a year, but I played it a lot when I was a kid with my parents and like family friends. We'd get together once a year, and that was like one of my first board games that I was not opposed to. Monopoly. Oh shit. Oh, excuse me. So Clue, in comparison, is a little better.
Look, here's the thing. If you're we role play in Monopoly every fucking day in our real lives. Okay?
I dream about it in my fucking subconscious. I'm not here to play it on a fucking board game, okay?
Right. Every time I check the fucking headlines, I'm like, oh boy. I didn't pass go. I didn't collect $200.
Yeah, no. I'm going straight to jail. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. But
no, you collected $200. That was the stimulus money that we got to get us through the entirety of the pandemic, remember?
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, that's true.
Okay, anyway.
Koof said, I remember playing Crusader Kings 2 with a non-role player, and I made a ton of bad choices that made sense for my current character. The person I was playing with was surprised.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, role-playing and playing suboptimally really doesn't translate to other types of games. So maybe that's, like, part of the, like, where that distinction is, too, right? Because, like, I feel like a hallmark of role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, is, like, intentionally playing suboptimally. Like, I feel like that's so much of it.
Oh, we get to use one of my favorite buzzwords from a few years ago on TTRPG Twitter, which was metagaming. I'm gonna start discourse.
Listen, if I never see the word metagaming in an internet comment thread ever again, it will be too fucking soon, and please assume that I am dead.
Oh my god. Odds or I think odds. I do have. Before I elaborate on that comment, I do want to say that dang, my sisters always took me to Scarlet, so I did Colonel Mustard, and that shaped me. I just have to point out, odds, that I think your chosen color on Twitch is a very mustard yellow, and I appreciate that.
Also,
I always
isn't a lot of
played
odds branding kind of similar colors as well? I feel like yeah.
A lot of very like I hesitate to use the word like simple to describe it, but like yeah, it's my brand now.
Sick.
Yeah, so I often played Mrs. Peacock, not because like blue is my favorite color, but we actually lost the little blue meeple. And so there were, there was the red meeple for Mrs. Scarlet, or for Miss Scarlet, and there was the yellow meeple for Colonel Mustard, and there was the green one for the professor, or no, the purple one for Professor Plum, and there's the green one for whoever that guy was. And then we had a little mini R2D2, because that was white and blue. And that lived in the color.
Good.
And that was Mrs. Peacock. And so I always played R2D2 in Clue. And that's a fun little bit of John Moore for all of you. So there's just a start.
That's like, what? I think he said it was C-3PO in the pantry with a grappling hook. I recognize that those aren't real things in Clue, but neither is C-3PO or R2-D2, so anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's all good.
Yeah. It also is just hysterical to me to try and like reconcile the presence of a Star Wars astromech in the canon of Clue. There are a bunch of like 1920s people trying to solve a very real murder before the police arrive in this house, where like a regular guy was stabbed or bludgeoned with a lead pipe or whatever. And there's just a fucking astromech wheeling around, like beeping and getting up to weird shenanigans. And maybe the astromech killed him.
Star Wars and Agatha Christie is the crossover that we never knew we needed. But
like an Agatha Christie novel, but there's just R2D2 in it. And nobody comments on this.
No, it's not weird. It's just normal. It's just, yeah. It's oh my god, it's a Doctor Who episode. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you're right.
Daleks too,
Yep.
Oh my god. Also, Odds, I appreciate that you cosplayed as him when you went to see Clue. That's very good. Anyway, circling back around to the point that I had begun to make, which was about metagaming, and I think that's an experience that is essential to board gaming, right? Because as Odds talked about earlier, like you approach a board game from the standpoint of the win condition, right? If you're playing Card Assassins, which is like a mafia-esque social deduction game, everybody has a card in front of them, and you know what your target is, and you have a list of words that you're trying to get them to say, and if they say any of those words, they're dead. Somebody else at that table also has a list of words that they're trying to get you to say, and if you say those, you die. And the goal, of course, is to be the last one standing, and boom. We've started from the place of that. Now, whatever the hell we choose to talk about for the next 5, 10, 15 minutes, a year, if you're like trying to play the fucking long game with your roommates or something like that, that's whatever. But like we approach the game from that standpoint, right? Of how does the game end? And I don't think even when we talk about like D&D modules, there's not really a like what's the win condition. When I'm sitting down to roll up a paladin for my friend's Halloween one shot, I'm like, okay, so
yeah, that's true. I don't know. There's it's an interesting topic for sure. Like this, it's fascinating to think about like where we draw those lines.
I like that.
I'm glad that both styles exist. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm not always in the mood for a board game, but also at the same time, if you're out and about and you're at a place and you have something in your pocket that's really quick, like a board game that in the pocket, like a card game, I guess that's called, huh? A smarter person would have said that already, huh? Or you just like just something quick, something a little faster. It's like maybe like 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you're really like if you're doing a couple rounds, and you
Yeah.
can like do that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For sure. No, I agree. I think
I
it's
have no.
important.
I don't think. Yeah, I know
No, I
that
think
there's a line too, but
I know. I think it's important that they both exist because like sometimes you don't like even me. Sometimes I don't have the space like mentally to like sit down and commit to all the types of brain power that D&D or TTRPGs require, but I still want to be like doing something. It's rare because if I'm hanging out with my friends, usually the last thing that I want to do is like some sort of structured activity unless it's TTRPGs because that is unstructured in a different way. But or structured in a different way. But like sometimes I will want to like sit and just play a board game, just like a fun little thing. And I think for me it's just finding the ones. I would not call myself a board game nerd because I think I'm very picky about board games that I play. Like I do not enjoy all board games, but there have been some that I've played that I'm like, this is dope. So like yeah.
Yeah, I said, okay. This is a hard thing in D&D combat. Like the game mechanics are a literal interpretation of an abstract idea, and when dungeon masters are like, you can't communicate about above game stuff in combat, it's like handicapping the game. Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a line there for sure. Like on the one hand, like if you're not talking about like how many hit points you have and like that kind of stuff, like obviously your characters don't know about hit points and wouldn't communicate in those terms, but they'd like be communicating that information somehow and like including visually. Like if you can visually tell that somebody's hurt, but this is not a visual medium of a game, so the only way that you can convey it to somebody in the same way of them just looking at you saying, "Oh, that guy's fucked up," is to just talk about hit points. So like I'm right there with you, Odds. Like that's definitely something that like I think gets. But there's also a line. There's a line on the other side of that, of course, which is that like if you're just like if one person's turn starts taking like 5 to 10 minutes because everybody's trying to weigh in on what to do and what the optimal thing to do is or strategy or you should do this or because then I'll do this and then I'll do that, right? Whatever. That kind of thing then becomes, I think then that is certainly a place where it's like, all right guys, listen. you can convey some things to each other, but this is not something like it's basically it's a shit or get off the pot situation. Like it's a like, but yeah, or like the line between what your character can and can't do based on what their character sheet says. It goes both ways. Like if you're too free, then why am I playing a monk if you can just punch people hard? And the other is, oh, I can't look for traps because I'm not a rogue. BS. No, you're absolutely right, and I think you're right that this problem kind of goes. It does go both ways, and I'm right there with you on the whole thing. Like if it's, I'm on the record about this. I don't enjoy free form RP or rules light systems for exactly that reason, because it's like, okay, well, because basically if you make it too free form, then you have basically taken away any meaningful choices for me. Like meaningful choices are gone as far as the character that I made, because then it's like, well, what is the difference between saying I'm this character and saying I'm this character who can do these things, right? Like what does it matter then? And I think that's a thing that bothers me, because then if I can't get my head around like a concept, then like as a character concept, then I'm not going to be able to play the game right. I'm going to be in my head the whole time, like I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not going to have fun because I'm focusing on like what the fuck is happening.
That's me anytime I play a PBTA game, and I know that PBTA is a great system. I
Yeah.
just can't get my head around it.
Same. Like nothing
It's
against
just
it
like
at all.
exactly the wrong blend of specificity and vagary.
Yeah.
Just like it's right at the wrong spot for me, and I'm like, God, I can't. I feel like this. If this were more freeform, I would feel at home, and if this were slightly more specific, like noodly, then I would also feel at home. But I exist in a strange liminal place.
It's like me whenever I try to do presentations on anything in school, right? Like if I sat there and I wrote everything out, I wrote my presentation down, like all of it, including cues and everything, I was gonna choke. Like there, like hands down, I was gonna choke in my presentation because I would forget the next thing in the sequence that I had painstakingly written down. Right. So like I either had to like memorize that shit, or I had to just plan nothing and write nothing down and just come knowledgeable, right? Or because if I came with like specific things written down and like a very specific rigid presentation structure but no memorization, I was gonna choke because that's what I was focusing
Mm-hmm.
on, the structure and not on the conveyance of information. Whereas the other way, so like I operate in one of those weird places where I either need extreme specificity or absolutely no, just tell me to like look in the field and just run. Um, that's what I need. Like, it's tough. If you send me somewhere in the middle, I will shut down. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know what I can, because you're telling me there's a right way, but you're also telling me I can do whatever I want, and those ideas are incompatible in my brain.
Yeah, Odd said, yeah, when we played Wanderhome, my partner left feeling like that was good, but I was left wondering what to do because we're so used to some train tracks essentially, or like or like why are we playing kind of listlessness? And I think that there's a combination of factors to that because I basically made up the entire thing and the entire like I basically had a single image in my head that I tried to unspool an entire like 2 hour session of Wanderhome out of
Mm-hmm.
while also simultaneously teaching 5 people how to play it. Or
Yeah.
5 people? Yeah, 5 people how to play it. So like, there was a certain amount of it that I think came with that, which is everybody's learning the game. But also like, yeah, it does take some adjusting when you're going from playing games like Dungeons and Dragons that are, you know, you have a lot of things to hold on to use at any given time. Like there's like, oh, I have an action or a bonus action, my movement, and these are all like very tactical elements that I'm like focusing on when I'm playing this game. Whereas like when you're playing Wander Home, the question, the thing that you're asking yourself is like, not what's the most tactically advantageous thing I can do right now. You're kind of like removing yourself to the point of what's what's the best what's what direction do I think I can take this next? And especially when you're used to having a GM running the game for you and kind of
Mm-hmm.
like laying down those tracks in front of you, even
That's
if there's like several options to
oh
choose
yeah.
from. I think people who've done a lot of playing or even a lot of GMing aren't used to the experience of communal GMing, where you're like,
That's why I struggle with games like Kids on Bikes, or not Kids on Bikes. Sorry, Mall Kids. I
mhm,
struggle with Mall Kids with like GMless games or solo TTRPGs. I struggle with them because I'm like I feel like I need a structure and I don't have it. And I don't know how things happen and how to verify that things happen because I have no structure. And like there's like for me it's like there's a critical structure missing.
mhm.
That I don't have that I have in like in a regular TTRPG that is GM'd. I struggle with that exact thing. Um, yeah.
It's one of those things where like I do as an editor, like having edited a fair few solo games, I do like when the author of solo games, in particular GMless games, include passages about role switching, right? Because one that I worked on recently called Caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
It's a solo game about being like a guardian, an invisible guardian spirit to a bunch of heroes who are, returning to a post-apocalyptic world to explore it once more. Uh, and your job is not to make them fight good. Your job, like you are kind of hands off. You're there to kind of just like nudge them little bits in the right direction and help them heal and and bond. But there's a passage in that game that says the drama muse, and it's like most of the time you are going to be playing like or 50% of the time you're going to be playing a guardian spirit or the heroes. The other half of the time when a monster attacks or when you draw cards, you have to switch perspectives and you have to go from you switch perspectives, and now you're the drama muse, and you have to choose what's most dramatic in this moment. When the hero does, like, what's going to stand most in the hero's way here? Does somebody say something to somebody else that picks at a nerve, and now these two heroes have strife with each other? How does the monster choose which person to attack? Well, maybe it's this person because it's like it singles them out for this reason. Like now, like it tells you, this is a role that you take on, and then you take it off and you return to being the spirit, and then you take the spirit hat off and you switch and you put on the drama muse hat again.
You know what I struggle? I just pinpointed. Like as you were talking, I remembered what thing it is that I struggle specifically. I think there's a solution in like a GM-less game, but in a solo TTRPG, the thing that I struggle with is how the fuck do you handle NPCs? How does that work? How does that work? Like, what are you doing? What's happening? How do you what? How do? And I'm sure that somebody is going to come up with an answer with an answer for that, and is going to tell me how it's done, and it's going to be an answer that is unsatisfying to me because it's going to be something to the effect of like either you abstract your way through that conversation, you kind of like just figure out how it would probably go, or you like some sort of like journaling option or something like that where like you do it that way, where you have it in like dialogue. And I think at that point, if those are in fact the types of answers that you would get to like how you handle the NPCing, then I think solo TTRPGs are just not for me. Because to me, the biggest and most important thing, the most attractive thing about TTRPGs for me, no, I think that's it. Let's go with that. I am not into solo TTRPGs. I'm saying this. This is a statement that I am making that I have just now landed on and decided live here on the internet. And the reason that I am not into solo TTRPGs is because the most interesting thing about a TTRPG is how dynamic it can be with this when you input the social and like collective creativity aspect of it. I'm not into TTRPGs because I think it's just such a cool mechanics. It's just cool mechanics or whatever, or like because I just want to like. Because if I wanted to do that, I could get a better experience just playing an RPG video game. A more satisfying one. And that's not why I play TTRPGs. So
Right.
I don't know. I think I get why they exist, and I can understand who they would be appealing to, but I am not one of those people, which is a decision that I have come to in this moment.
I think that's pretty fair too. Like if what you come to tabletop RPGs for is very much about the social experience and is very much about the space in between an NPC that you've kind of like created or like have an idea for how they behave and how they act and how somebody else interacts with them, then that's an experience that's very hard for you to get in a solo tabletop RPG because you kind of have to be the one code switching there. And that's all fine and good, but it's a lot closer to kind of the act of just like a creative writing experience than it is like a role play experience.
I don't think that's for me. GM-less, on the other hand, is different because there's still a social aspect to that. I just think that with GM-less games, I think I need a significant sort of explicit structure, not necessarily from the game itself, but at the table. Like, for instance, like, oh, if we get into an interaction with an NPC, like if you get into an interaction with an NPC, then one of the other players at the table can take on the role of that NPC. But that needs to be explicit, because otherwise I will just feel awkward and I'll just sit there and be like, so... And it just feels like we're explaining what's happening to each other. And like that's fine. I mean, that might be good for... That might be enough for some people. For me, that's not really like the thing. I think like I would want to have that kind of like back and forth, the give and take that you would have with a GM. So I think I could be good with a GM-less game. I just think that I need explicit structure at the table, not necessarily from the game mechanics either, just from like at the table with the other players.
There's some really interesting way. I think Wanderham has an interesting way of handling that with Kith, right? Where like if you're playing the game kind of as intended, you put them together by like combining a few like natures.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have like a card with the NPC on it that anybody can pick up, which is an interesting kind of offshoot of the first thought that I had, which reminds me a lot of like belonging games, in which like setting elements themselves are a playbook that anyone can pick up at a certain time. So if somebody's like having a scene as their character, somebody else at any time can pick up the setting and be like, I think that this happens now. Like, and choose like a list of prompts or things from there.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, it's true.
Also,
I also think
I see what you're laughing at.
Yeah. Coops, I agree with you. That's the same for me. Like, even for RPG like games, like the video games, if I'm playing tabletop RPGs, I don't enjoy them as much. I agree. I'm the same way. Because even Baldur's Gate, like, I'll be playing Baldur's Gate and I'll be like, oh god, I just want to get back to the table. I just want to play TTRPG. Like, this is great. God, I want to play some D&D right now.
Some D&D, man. Yeah.
So, like, I feel you. It's the same thing. But, like, at least that is a more dynamic experience, in my opinion, and a more satisfying and rewarding one than just doing it myself. Because then I am the input and the output for the world of that game. And it's hard. Like, I'm GMing and playing the game simultaneously, and GMing is fucking exhausting enough as it is. I don't want to do that shit, and I know I'm a fucking problem player. I don't want to GM for myself. Because the thing is, when somebody else is GMing for me, I am kind to them because they are another person. If I were GMing for myself, I would be so fucking critical. I'd be like, I would be the worst problem player if I was GMing for myself. The worst player at the table, and also the only player at the table. Yeah.
Posting, that's the most fucking cerebral post on Ask a DM ever.
Yeah.
Like, or whatever, behind the screen or whichever sub it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I'm playing solo games and I have a problem player. It's me.
That is some Fight Club meets D&D nonsense right there. And that's a crossover that I never wanted, asked for, or even thought about, and I will not.
That would be such a good meme post.
The struggle of doing some weird hinge shit versus being so good you get invited back is real for always GMs. Look, when I am a player at the table, I am chaos. I create chaos because it's like that thing where, like, you know, the kid who grew up in a really strict family, really strict household, and then they go to college and they just go off the fucking wall because, like, now it's not restricted, and they just go and do insane bullshit.
But
it's
like D&D,
that, but for D&D. I am the one who always has to be, like, corralling the players and making sure there's a bit of, like, deep fucking cut, Amity. Holy shit. That is a deep cut, and I appreciate you. That is a deep cut, and I am very impressed. That's
flames make fast and get goopy.
Flames make fast. Holy shit.
That's almost it. That's more than a year ago now that we've played that game.
Jesus, it feels like simultaneously not that long ago, and also way longer ago than that.
Yeah, for those out of the loop, I ran a game of Monsters and Microphones, one of my one-page RPGs over on my channel, which I do actually need to run a second game of that. So
I played a character that was basically just Eduardo from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and who was a drummer. Yeah.
Really, I'm gonna have to put that merch on my channel.
I think it was 21, Matt. I think it was 2021. Yeah.
I think it was. Ooh, wow. Was it really 2 years ago?
It was late 2020. It was actually, about 2 years ago now, because it was late 2021, I think.
Time isn't real.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sheesh. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now. So I want to scroll back up a little bit because there's some interesting. That's it. I didn't get into TTRPGs until I was like 30 and never had an opportunity before that. It was a dwarf fighter, and I only played them for like 3 sessions. My favorite NPC I ever created was also the first one I created, a half-orc barbarian. Super cool. Yeah. I remember my first D&D character was not very memorable. She was a 3.5 ranger. I can't remember what her name was. I played her for 3 hours at a game night at one of my college's like all-night game nights, and it was a fun one shot that one of my friends ran, and there were a bunch of methods, and then I think somebody like a bard or something successfully convinced one of the methods to just fly manually to one of the poles of the planet with a message for somebody, and that's how that fight ended.
Oh, I wasn't part of this
No,
game,
the
but
deck of many things was in there. They pulled a card out of it.
Yeah, I wasn't part of this game, but I heard about it because if I remember correctly, the DM didn't read the Mephit's like summoning ability correctly, because the summons aren't able to summon more Mephits. Only the original Mephits can summon Mephits, but the DM didn't read that, and so he just infinitely kept summoning Mephits like a Russian nesting doll of and yeah.
2, and then there were 4, and then there were 16, and then there were 32, and then there were...
Yeah, I remember hearing about this.
Yep.
They should get smaller and tougher.
Each successive method has minus, like, is one size class smaller and minus 1 int.
Until they
arrive
at 0 int, at which point it just summons and it's already dead. Like it just summons a dead Mephit.
Yeah, it just summons like some charcoal with lighter fluid on it. That's what a 0 int method is. It's charcoal with lighter fluid on it. Summons the element. Here's some mud.
Yeah.
A 0 int mud method is like a jar of dirt and a bottle of water.
Yeah. Oh my god.
What channel was that game? That game wasn't on a channel. It was in Valder's Hall of in the pit in Valder's Hall of Science.
I think Matt was asking about which was Monsters and Microphones. I think it was on John's channel.
Oh, yeah, that was on my channel. Oh yeah. Monsters and Mics was on my channel. I definitely saved those.
Yeah.
A message to someone at the poll. Santa? Yes, maybe. I can't remember exactly what. I don't think we literally sent a message to Santa, but we told. I think they told the Mephits to go somewhere cold and wet, and because it was a deck of many things, that worked out for them.
See, now I just want to run an encounter where there's like some monsters who can summon copies of themselves infinitely, but each one that has like if one of the original ones dies, then all the monsters that it summoned and so on down the line go away, right? So it's like a high risk high reward kind of thing where it's like, yeah, you're gonna get overwhelmed really fast, but if you could take out that one guy, then this gets infinitely easier, right? Like that kind of thing. And now that sounds like a nightmare to run, but could be fun and interesting design.
Yeah, here's a Tarrasque. It is gargantuan in size. It summoned another Tarrasque, but that one is only
find the right guy.
That one is only huge in size. And then that huge Tarrasque summoned 2 more Tarrasques, but those ones are only large. Until you have a tiny Tarrasque, a tiny Rask, if you will.
Oh, God.
He's less than 1 foot tall. It's a pug, but a Tarrasque.
Find the right guy, says Danny, and that's fucking funny. Also, I cast MLM Scheme is also very funny.
I cast Pyramid Scheme.
Oh, God.
Also, thank you, Matt, for posting the clips from my channel. Flames make fast and gotta get... I forgot about second puberty. I don't know what the context for that clip is.
In fairness,
But
I think if anybody had a second puberty, they would like to forget it as well. So like, that's
mhm.
I'd like to forget my first one, frankly. Yeah.
I can't believe this. I can't believe this. Lucas is reading my message, and I have an ad. Oh no!
No.
Shaking my fist at Twitch.
Yep.
Yeah. Insane.
My party's in the Feywild. I could justify that. Yes, good.
Do it again, Lucas. Okay, I'll read back over Danny's. Oh, God,
I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Find the Right Guy is very funny. I don't know why that specifically just like cracks me up, but it's just something about. I think it's because like the meme of like weird little guys, you know, and so then just find the right guy. It just makes me laugh. But also I cast MLM scheme is fucking funny. That's amazing. Yeah, literally just build an encounter based on a that's just an MLM. Very much considering making that encounter for my party. Good, do it, Coops, do it. Smashing them all, picking them up by hand and shaking them. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Where's Waldo? But when you kill Waldo, everyone else disappears, and also they're trying to kill you. Yeah. Yeah. Ooh. That's horrifying, actually, to think about, but very funny. Could be a fun encounter, too. Yeah. Honestly, I would probably literally do it as, like, literal Russian nesting dolls as the monster.
Yeah.
Like, they're just animated Russian nesting dolls. Animated matryoshka. Matryoshki? Whatever the plural is. That.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
There will be nightmares.
There will be nightmares. Yeah.
There will be dreams. Vivid, nightmarish beings inside of one another for eternity.
I mean,
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Geek
It's
Outs.
like,
Oh, sorry, Freeman. Sorry.
nope, that's all.
Geek Outs. Why not both? It could be both. Actually, I think I just described an orgy, so maybe.
Oh,
John, I believe you're muted, John.
Well,
I am no more. I'm muted no more. The triangle is pointing in 3 directions, so you could. So if you rotate it, you could be at the top.
Oh gosh. Yes, in this specific context, we were talking about a multi-level marketing scheme. No, I did not realize that Matt was actually legitimately asking the question, because Matt's legitimate question sounded very similar to a joke that Matt would actually make.
Yeah, no, we mean we were in that instance talking about multi-level marketing, which is to say pyramid schemes.
And the thing is, the reason I was convinced that it was just Matt making a joke is because I myself, whenever somebody talks about an MLM, that's also where my head goes. My head immediately goes to, oh yes, men loving men. That's immediately where my brain goes. So, is this?
Don't mind me. I'm just lighting a candle on stream.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Oh man, what was I gonna say? I feel like I had an actual thing to say on a topic, and I don't remember what it was. What were we talking about before we went off into? Very nice. Before we went off into Mephit land and Russian nesting doll encounters and.
I was just kind of scrolling back through chat and reading things, and somebody mentioned 3.5, and so I had and first characters, and that's kind of how we got there. But yeah, I was also just kind of catching up on things. Back when we were talking about like listlessness in tabletop RPGs. All of that. So I do think it helped me. Oh, go ahead.
No, just total side note. I keep having like momentary amnesia and forgetting how just this is battery acid. I'm drinking battery acid right now. This is and I keep forgetting about it. I keep forgetting about it and taking another drink and then having the exact same reaction on camera. So for those of you who've been watching and wondering what the hell is happening, that's what's happening. Ooh.
Henby magic, baby.
Like it's
if
good,
you could have any kind of
go ahead. Continue. Don't ignore my struggle over here, please. Just
that's it. If you could have any kind of whiskey drink, why would it be an old fashioned? Let me sing to you virtues of old fashioned. Right. The old fashioned is a fantastic drink because,
because I don't have to taste the whiskey. No.
Yes. I think the best, if I'm going to give like the company line here, I think an old fashioned for somebody who is not like really deeply ingrained whiskey drinking or bourbon drinking or scotch drinking or whatever, it's a nice way to be able to taste more of the like flavorful elements of a whiskey by dulling some of the burn of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
you use
it
good
is
enough whiskey for it, then you don't even have the burn.
Yes, that does. Having very good whiskey in the first place helps, but good whiskey is kind of expensive. So,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm not really a whiskey guy. I don't enjoy it. It tastes to me like I'm licking the inside of a barn, and I don't particularly enjoy that flavor. Because that, especially if it burns, because that flavor coupled with the burn, like, it makes it really hard for me to get it down. And so then the only other way for it to go is up, and that's also bad.
Yes.
And so that's my issue with whiskey as a drink. But like old fashioned, I have been weirdly very into old fashions lately. So like.
Yeah, a little bit of water, a little bit of sweetness, and some fruity flavors from like an orange rind and the cherry that you put into an old fashioned really kind of helps to do that. Says I'm too lazy and cheap to drink alcohol.
In there, like
yes,
Hmm?
so your
bitters. So
the process for an old fashioned is like a sugar cube or two, or just like real sugar. You put some bitters in there, put a splash of water in there. You mix that together. Run an orange rind, like a piece of orange rind around the outside of the glass. Ice, pour whiskey over, stir, add cherry somewhere in there. Drink.
Shoot with a flamethrower, and you're good to go.
Yeah. Ignite.
Ignite.
Says I'm too lazy and cheap to drink alcohol. I was that way for a long time, and frankly, I still am. But I have allowed myself the indulgence of like a bottle of whiskey about like every month or two that I'll just keep and use to make old fashions. And it's sometimes like in the way that the act of cooking is like kind of a nice like thing to do to like ground myself or wind myself down a little bit. Like on a weekend evening where I'm like, I'm just going to sit in and play Destiny for the rest of the night. It's kind of nice to just like go downstairs and to do this little ritual and then get like a tasty drink that will make me a little bit floaty for the rest of the evening.
Yeah.
And then, come back. I cast a spell on myself. I brew my little chill out magic potion. Made with Walcott whiskey.
Yeah, I can see people are talking about like their first experiences playing TTRPGs or D&D specifically, and I think I feel like I think it's an interesting topic to talk about, like how we what our first experiences were like, our first impressions were like, and like please if you have them share them. I'm enjoying reading them. I feel like I've shared mine before. And I don't know that it's worth sharing it again because I don't like talking about that side of things, which is like just the really bad experience that I had with a poorly managed game where the DM wasn't stepping in where they should, and just telling people like, look, it doesn't matter how you put the unconscious body on his mount to get him through the door. What matters is that you do it. That's all I care about. It's the only thing that matters. And that's not really worth talking about, I don't think. So I'm trying to think of like what my first positive experience playing D&D was, the one that like got me in. I think it probably is the game that we played together, John, where we, with our friends from school after we graduated. I think that was probably what I would consider my first like positive experience, like truly positive, like not just like, oh yeah, it was fun, but I didn't know what I was doing, or I knew what I was doing, but I hated what was going on, right? Like that wasn't like, it was the first truly all around positive D&D experience that I had was like playing with our friends from school.
Yeah, I think
after graduating.
That's pretty much like the one that I would cite as well.
Like granted, I'd played TTRPGs before that, but that was my first D&D specific. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I played a couple of 3.5 one shots, and then I made a 3.5 one shot that I hid some Magic the Gathering characters in that a few of my friends played, and very, very kindly told me it was fun. They killed a dragon in like 2 rounds because I underestimated how powerful characters of the level that I let them be were. And I didn't know how to GM. And so I was like, oh shit, I could just fudge the dragon save. Oops. But yeah, the first like really like enjoyable ongoing D&D experience I had was that did.
Yeah. I feel like
Danny.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you go ahead. I'm just reading chat.
I liked what Odds asked earlier, which was what changed and what hasn't is interesting too about how you play or how you make characters. I always feel weird when questions like this get asked because I feel like I don't play enough. I haven't been a player enough to be able to genuinely answer that question. Like I'm almost never thinking about my characters, or like how to, play them or how to make them. Like I'm not the kind of D&D enthusiast who like is always theory crafting an interesting, fun character build. Like that's not me.
I know my characters are almost always inspired by characters that I have read or watched. That's a thing that I know that has stuck with me. A lot of times I'll be like, what's the space between this fictional character and this fictional character? Or what if this fictional character had influence from this other like piece of media that I've read or watched or played or whatever? What if the Bastion narrator was a bard in D&D, and that was my first like long-term D&D character, and that was so much fucking fun.
That was cool. I remember
kind
that.
Of sad writer man.
Freeman, you seem like you had some thoughts about like how has like the way that you made characters. You've made a lot of characters over the years. Has the way that you play D&D or make characters changed?
It's interesting because, or not interesting, because I don't really have. I really don't know. I don't have a formula, to be honest with you.
Well, are there different things that you think about now than you did then, or like...
There is because first of all, to answer the very first question about like what was the first experience, it was definitely none of the earlier stuff that I've mentioned on this channel way back in the day. It doesn't matter, but like a good experience would be like when we started doing everything pre-Axiom.
Oh yeah.
When we were like in there, really like was not Axiom at that point as playing elf or half elf. I think it was an elf.
I think Damien was an elf.
Damien was an elf cleric. That was a really good experience. I didn't really have an idea. A lot of my characters really are just like at earlier points have just been like not thought out, just like a little bit here and there, and then I figure it out as I go. Basically, all of my barbarian for our at-home campaign for Axiom until level 20 was a lot of like at the beginning, just like a skeleton and just like making things up as I went. And now I kind of like thinking about the story stuff. And also the mechanics, like how to make a character like efficient in battle. Um, but it's not always easy. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to I don't really know how to answer the question really like
Yeah,
effectively,
that's
unfortunately.
fair.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
But
think because
like
like,
I always,
oh,
no, I always like try to like sometimes I do like get ideas for like a really cool character when I watch a show, and I'm like, there's an aspect of this character because honestly, like they are the main character, so like it's not going to be it's not going to be a full on badass. You're like taking an aspect of that character to fit with your like something in your imagination that you create.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because like, so odds also asked just like, what's the difference between like, additionally like how like even just what
Mm-hmm.
you like about D&D, and I think for I can say in terms of my GMing, there is a difference between when I started uh and now what kinds of things I liked doing. And I used to think I was just like really derivative and just like not creative at all because I kept doing the same plot over and over again, which is that like these really bad things from somewhere else, like another dimension or another galaxy, another universe or whatever, have now come and are trying to take over and destroy
Mm.
everything. And I would just do that over and over again. Um, and also, and like related, I would also do the like I would go like hard into like the epic scale, like high fantasy, heroic fantasy, just epic scale type stuff. Whereas now, and those would go hand in hand often. Those two things would go hand in hand. Now I feel like I'm much more attracted to like more grounded games. I'm much more attracted to games that are like where you have like street level heroes who are often just people just trying to like get by, and the world reflects that tone as well, where like the world isn't like some high fantasy playground for everybody to run around in, right? And become heroes overnight. Like the world is much more like the world pushes back, like the world keeps, and so those are the games that I tend to run now, and that's a huge difference that I've noticed in myself recently. And I think it started around the time when we were like winding down Infinite Horizon, because I enjoyed doing that. And Infinite Horizon was very much like an epic scale. We are heroes game,
Mhm.
right? Um,
Yeah.
and this is a thing I don't know that I've ever talked about on stream before publicly. Also, hi, Newly Human. Glad you're here. I'm glad you're here now. But yeah, so this is something I never, because one of the things that we were planning on doing originally, before we sort of hit kind of our sort of our the wall that we hit with Rule of Lore and actual plays and stuff like that. One of the things that we were planning on doing, so Thunder and Blood was our Cyberpunk Red short game that we were doing. It was like a 4 or 5 episodes. I don't remember how many episodes we did of Thunder. I think it was 4.
I think so.
Four?
That
I don't
I
sounds
think
remember.
about
so
right.
as well.
I think it was 4,
It's
3 or 4,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere
Yeah.
in there. Um, and that was intended to be kind of our backdoor pilot into what our next long-term campaign was supposed to be. So the next long-term campaign was originally planned to be the Cyberpunk Red long-term game. And like we had everything set up, like all those characters were going to be the characters that the players were going to play in that long-term game. But the thing that I was really excited about going into Cyberpunk Red is that inherent in the genre of cyberpunk is the idea that narrative exceptionalism does not exist. And what I mean by that is you guys, your players, your characters are not the heroes. They are not superheroes. They're not special. They're just people living in that world.
It is reflected too in the mechanics of that game.
Very
like,
much so.
Combat is, and I'm gonna do the bit, lethal. Combat in Cyberpunk Red will kill you.
Yes.
The ease with which player characters kill bad guys is almost identical, just slightly ahead. The ease with which one of them can just kill you.
Yep. I mean, like, you remember in Thunder and Blood, Drax's character literally lost a hand, and that wasn't something I decided. That happened because of a roll of the dice, literally a roll of the dice. So, like, he lost a hand, his other hand, because he already was missing one.
Yeah, two robot hands now.
Yeah. But
Cyberpunk Red mantra, who the fuck are you?
Yeah. And so, like, that's, I think, a change I've noticed in myself is in terms of what I enjoy in TTRPGs. The over-the-top, epic, high fantasy action, I like it still, but that's not the place. I'm not pushing to go. If anything, and this has been my struggle with D&D lately, if anything, I'm fighting the game system to keep my players sort of in that more grounded period of time, which in D&D is anything before 5th level. Which, because after 5th level, it's insane. It just, the power jump between 4th and 5th level is nuts. Like, probably the highest, like, just, relatively speaking, it is the highest jump in power in the entire game, unless you're playing a fighter, because then you get your 2nd and 3rd extra attacks. Eventually.
True.
So, like,
you just have to make it in your fantasy setting. You just have to make bats extremely rare, so that bat guano is very, very difficult to come by. So that being able to deal 8d6 damage in a 60-foot circle is a sphere is just that much.
Dude, my DM banned Fireball at the table. I didn't ban Fireball at the table. I just said that bats are extinct.
There's like 6 samples of dried bat guano in the world, and they're in a museum. You just have to do a heist to get bat guano. It's fine.
And then you can cast Fireball.
6 samples? 6 or sick? What did you say?
I said 6.
One of them, at least one of them might be sick.
Samples, bro, of these bat shits in this museum.
Actually, there's only 5 samples now because one of the janitors at the museum thought it would be fun to smoke one of them. So
yeah, bro. That's what he sounds like. Anyway, sorry, I'll shoot.
No, that was incredible. I adore this character. I need to know more about him.
Also, how does magic healing affect the diamond economy in your setting? Yeah, there you go. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Diamond's literally just a rock that we decided was valuable that we can make better versions of. But in fantasy settings...
In fantasy settings, they're fucking useful, which means that that there's a reason for them to be as expensive as they are, and not just fake monopolies. Anyway,
right.
Capitalism sucks, eat the rich. Anyway, moving on.
Or, as Little Drummer said from a Q&A that we went to this last Sunday with Matt Mercer, he said, or you can make a high magic game and give people 1 million spell slots.
Right? And I think that's the difference for me, like, it's in terms of, like, the, like, what I like. Odds said, yeah, like, I like, I like D&D heroic epic fantasy, and I try not to make characters who aren't going to fit that arc when I play it. And there's other games for other types of stories. I agree. And that's not to say you can't do those same stories in D&D, but I think the conceit of D&D is that you have to, at some point, unless you end the game before they get to 5th level, or you just, like, cap the game at 5th level, which is valid. You could do that. But the conceit coming into D&D is that at some point your characters are going to become much more powerful than the average person in this world, like to the point where they are probably going to become superheroes. If not superheroes, then maybe supervillains, or just super merc squad, and that's just going to have that's the type of game that you are going to be playing. Um, and I think that's fine. I don't see that that's a problem. I think a lot of people might say that's a huge problem. I don't think it is. I think it's just part and parcel of what D&D is.
I do sometimes really want to play. They didn't like actually do this for Exandria Unlimited Calamity, but I do wonder. Like, I would love to play in a setting like that where there's just like this is like the height of arcane knowledge and power of a society. Magic is fucking everywhere. I'm just like, all right, anything below 5th level at will. Uh,
Yeah.
and then give a bunch of spell slots above that, and just be like, you all have essentially like reality altering powers on demand.
Yeah.
Or do something funky, like, you know, you total up, like take like some fucking marbles or like Mancala beads or something like that. Total up the number of spell slots, triple it, and just say every time you cast a spell, subtract the slot from your pile of beads, and that's how much your body can take.
It's not unlike what they do with cyberware in Cyberpunk Red.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you can replace. It's like the worst version of Ship of Theseus. If you keep replacing parts, eventually it stops being you in the worst way possible, in the homicidal way. But like, yeah. Anyway, and no, we are not going to take this moment to discuss how potentially problematic cyberpsychosis can be as a concept.
We are 2 minutes over time already, but
yeah, for that reason, but also because, you know, that's, I don't know, man. Like, I think here's all I will say about it. And no, the answer for me, it might be for you. The answer for me is not leave it out. The answer for me is there is an interpretation of cyberpsychosis that is not simply adding inorganic parts to your body makes you less human. And I think that is, they tried to write that into the game, but I don't think they did a good job of making it clear or explicit. But I disagree that you don't need something like it. I think having something like that is interesting, but not because, like, oh, you become less human the more inorganic parts you add to yourself. It's interesting, and I think even, I would argue, necessary in a cyberpunk setting, because part of what you're talking about is not about being less or more human in the sense of, like, are you a machine or are you a person? Because I think sufficiently advanced technology, I don't think that distinction matters. See Mass Effect. But what I think is matters, yeah, what makes you you and how do you know is exactly, Matt. That is, I think, exactly the thing that makes cyberpsychosis potentially an interesting thing, because it's not about exploring degrees of humanity, in my opinion. It's more about figuring out, something to losing yourself. Exactly. Because it's not about being more or less human. It's about being more or less yourself. And also just the brain's, like, figuring out where the brain's actual limitations are and what it can, like, handle. Right? Like, at a certain point, I think there would be a certain amount of, like, psychosis that would come from, like, looking at yourself and realizing that you, like, the flesh brain looking at the mechanical body going, like, what the fuck is happening? Like, there's an existential horror in that I think could break somebody, you know?
Yeah, like, and I think that's what cyberpunk media kind of gets at. And, you know, like, I just finished reading the Grave of Empires series by Sam Sykes, and that's a fantasy series in which the magic all has a cost to it. Like there's an otherworldly entity that gives mages their magic, and in order for each mage to use their particular branch of magic, they give up something different. Like, you know, a mend mage gives up their blood in order for the ability to heal. A sky mage gives up gives up breath. So like if they use too much of their power, they asphyxiate, right? Siege mages who can, you know, are basically like the Incredible Hulk, but in a mage form, like give up emotions every time they make themselves stronger, right? You know, the ability to feel something. And I think, like, you know, the sufficiently advanced technology is an distinguished from magic kind of situation here, where, like, you know, what pieces of you do you give up when you let something else in or there or whatever? I don't know. It's
Yeah. Coops, that's a really good example. I forgot about the think tank, but you're absolutely right. Like they refuse to acknowledge that they're robots. Absolutely, because they can't. They're literally brains in a jar. Imagine what that would do to you, like, psychologically. And the thing is, and here's the last thing I'll say about this. If cyberpunk explores themes of transhumanism and exploring what it means to be human, then I think it is a mistake, in fact, to treat cyberpsychosis like a measure of your humanity. Because what is more human than looking at your organic form and having such a strong visceral reaction to the fact that it is no longer mostly present that you just fucking lose your mind? Nothing is more human than, in many ways, cyberpsychosis is the ultimate sort of like an extreme expression of humanity. Because
right.
it's like your brain literally not being able to cope with the fact that your organic body just basically doesn't exist anymore. Like that's very human.
I think most of it is in how the topic is written and handled.
Absolutely, yeah.
That comes in, because I know there was a lot of conversation about necrobiotic. I think there's another cyberpunk kind of tabletop RPG that was around that didn't handle the topic of like prosthesis and replacing body parts particularly well. So it's just it's a lot in how the author handles it and presents the issue, like thematically, like versus like just a very simplistic, you become monstrous because you've replaced parts of your body. No,
no.
It's a strange existential thing that are very, very, like the dregs of our wee little primate brains are not equipped to handle, because our technology evolved a lot faster than the process of evolution goes.
Yeah. I know I said we weren't going to talk about this, and then we just immediately started talking about it, but I'll say this is an interesting thing that may be worth a touch back later. But if anybody's seen Cyberpunk Edgerunners, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. This isn't really spoilers. This is just sort of like premise stuff. This is kind of the premise is that the main character, David, is much more able to handle cybernetics than the average person. He has a higher capacity for it than others. And what I think is interesting about that, and this is maybe worth a conversation at some point, not now, but in the TTRPG, your humanity score, which is what the thing that governs your cyberpsychosis or whatever, is based on your empathy. And so it's interesting what it says about David as a character, that, like, given that context, as to like why he's able to like handle more like cyberware in like like far and away above the average person. It's interesting what that says about him. I don't know. I think there's some interesting implications there that are worth like looking into, but whether that's a good conversation for Ramblemancy or just a topic for an essay that I'm never going to write, I don't know. You know,
I was gonna say there's an essay there. There's a blog post in that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. Actually, you know what, though? I think it would be interesting to have a conversation about the cyberpunk property as a whole, because there's some really interesting stuff that I've been noticing recently, particularly now that we have, like, 3 major sources of media within cyberpunk, right? Within that universe, right? We've got Cyberpunk 2077, we have Cyberpunk Red, which is the current iteration of a older TTRPG. And then we also have like Edge Runners, right? And there's more stuff on the way as far as I'm aware. Like I've heard rumors that there's like a live action movie or series like in talks. They're in talks for that. But like it might be worth having a conversation.
Just the very amusing thought of that show being in talks right now when generative AI is a conversation of much.
God, I know.
The irony of that just
God.
struck me full in the face, live on camera. So y'all got that unfiltered reaction. I said, "Hey, the show is great. Thank you. I like doing this."
To quote Cole, the meteor can come at any time. Anytime. Is it out there, Freeman?
Sadly, it is not.
Well, humanity's time on Earth may persist, but this episode of Ramblemancy must not.
What a segue.
What a transition to end. Wow.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us tonight. There were some really, really good conversations that you guys were sort of prompting along here, and I always appreciate your input into these conversations. And I'm glad you guys were here. Those of you who came late, I'm glad you got to see any of it at all. It's always good to see you guys in chat. We will be back on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific time with Tomorrow is Dead, episode 6? Yeah, 6.
Yeah.
Which we will be returning to the main cast, and you guys will be able to see the fun fallout of the recent reveal. Now that you've gotten a chance to see what a little bit of what Kit has been up to the last few years, but yeah, we will see you for that here Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And hopefully we'll see you next week. Or no, we won't see you next week for Ramblemancy because I keep forgetting it is already fucking Thanksgiving. So that's
It is somehow.
Stay tuned for updates on times and scheduling and stuff like that. Things naturally become very hectic at this time of year for everyone and for us in particular because everybody's going everywhere. So stay tuned for that. Expect delays in things such as Patreon posts and posting of videos to various platforms. That's just kind of part of the whole thing right now, but we're gonna do our best to stay on top of everything. But yeah, thank you so much everybody for coming and hanging out. We will see you on Wednesday for more I almost said In Too Deep, and I'm like, I was never even on that show. For more Tomorrow is Dead. But if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody.